In today's class, we're going to focus on bypassing security, whether it's blacklists or whitelists. So obviously programmers can implement certain features to thinking that they'll be preventing these kind of vulnerabilities. And we'll see how some of these features can be bypassed. So we have an example here that is very similar to the example that we used in the previous lectures. And as you can see, it's just a shop. If you click on one of the products, you get the product details. And we have the store checker in here that we always exploit. And you click check the stock, and then you get the number of units. And as usual, you want to test all the functionality in the web page, as we said before, for all vulnerabilities. But right now, we already know that this is vulnerable to an SSRF, and the goal is to show you how to bypass the security that this particular website is implementing. So again, as usual, we're going to turn on our interceptor and check the feature again. We have the request in here, and as you can see, it's the same stock API parameter that is vulnerable. Now, because we're going to be playing with this, I'm going to right click and send it to the repeater. And then we're going to go to the repeater in here so that we can play with it and see if we can exploit the stock API in here. So as usual, first of all, I like to send the normal request to just see the normal response that we get. And as you can see in a normal request that we haven't played with, you can see we just get the number of items that are still in stock for the location that we selected. So if we render the page, you'll just get the value of it. Now let's go ahead and play with it. And we saw previously, we replaced this with HTTP localhost, and when we did that, we were able to access resources that are not visible on this page. So when we did that, we were able to see the admin page in here, and then when we submit that request through the server, through the SSRF, we were able to access that admin page without a password because it was technically being loaded from the local host from the same machine. Now, if I send this, you can see that we're actually getting an error. Like I usually say, the errors that you're getting in these labs are very informative. So in a real life scenario, you might not get an error that is this informative, but this error is telling us that the external stock checker blocked for security reasons. So it's telling us that something got blocked. But in a real life scenario, you might try this, it doesn't work. So you're going to start scratching your head and thinking what could be happening in the background that is preventing you from sending requests. A possible mitigation or a possible implementation to prevent this that the developer might have done is to use a blacklist. And the way blacklists work is very simple. You send your request to the web server, and the web server will have a very simple if statement that will check if the request is in the blacklist. If it is, it won't send it to the other server. If it's not in the blacklist, it'll send it to the server. Now the blacklist, it's a simple file that contains a number of words basically, and then your if statement checks if your request contains any of these words, then it will block it. So if you're trying to go to admin or localhost or administrator or control panel, and this can be big, so they can include as many words as they want in here, the developer can do that. So if the request that you're sending, similar to what we're doing in here, we're asking for localhost, if it contains any of the words in the blacklist, then your request will be blocked. If it doesn't, which is a normal scenario when it's just checking for the stock, it will be sent to the server and the response will be sent with the amount of items in stock. So because blacklists include the words that should be blocked, if you manage to ask for what you want to ask in a different way, you will be able to bypass this blacklist. For example, let's zoom in on a blacklist in here, same blacklist. So we have admin localhost. Localhost is one of the words that is in the blacklist, but that's what we are trying to load. And there are so many ways to refer to localhost. For example, you can simply just write it with some capital letters. So L, capital O, capital L in here, and capital H. You could also refer to localhost by using the IP of the localhost, which is 127.0.0.1, which is basically just a reserved IP to refer to the localhost. Also, when it comes to IPs, you can actually remove the zeros from any IP and you'll still be able to go to the same location. So you can write 127.0.0.1 by simply doing 127.1. You can also use integer representation of the IP or the hex or the octal representation, and in some cases this will still load. So we're basically trying to say the same thing in a different way. Let me show you how easy this could be. So simply we have localhost in here, and I'm just going to capitalize the O, and let's capitalize the A in here, for example, and we're going to send this request. And as you can see, we have the admin page being displayed in here, because basically what happens is what we requested is not in the blacklist, and therefore we were able to bypass it, even though we haven't really done anything complex. We can also do some of the examples I showed you. For example, we can do 1271 and send it. And again, as you can see, we have the admin page. Now, we never know what's in the blacklist, so you should always try all of the possible ways of writing the same thing in a different way. Like I said, you could capitalize some letters. Depending on the scenario, there might be other ways of saying the same thing. For example, here, like I said, in the IP example, we could write the IP like this. Or you could try to encode the string that we're sending. So again, let's go back and write localhost. And this time, we're actually going to right-click this. We're going to convert the selection URL, and we're going to URL encode all characters. We're going to send it. And you'll notice that this time it got blocked because this if statement in here is smart. When it's checking if the request is in this blacklist, it's also decoding that and then checking it against the blacklist. And therefore, even though we're encoding the word localhost, when it gets decoded to the correct localhost string. And then when it checks it against the blacklist, it's able to know that this word is not allowed, and therefore our request is being denied. But what we can do, we can actually double encode it. So now we can encode it once. We're going to right click and convert selection again, URL, encode all characters. And let's send it again, and this time we double encoded it. And as you can see, we managed to bypass it, and we can see the admin, because what happens is this if statement is going to decode whatever string we have, which will still be URL encoded because we double encoded it. And therefore, when it checks against the list, it's still not going to be able to see that this string is in the list. And therefore, it's going to send it to the server, allowing us to see the admin. And then we can simply just do /admin and URL encode that, or we can double encode it, or we can even just do capital M, like what we did at the start, send it, and we're able to access the admin page. So, like I said, the main goal is to actually achieve the same goal by saying it differently. As long as whatever you're saying is not in the blacklist, and as long as that it's going to achieve your goal, then that's perfect. Then it will work. So another way of doing it is to register a domain name, for example, zaid.com, and have that resolved to 127001. And that way, when you type zaid.com in here, it's not going to be in the blacklist, it'll pass, and then your request is actually going to go translated to 127001, and you'll be able to access the local resources on that server.